Economist here. Oh man, what do I talk about while people come into the live stream? Well, let's just kind of give it a little brief summary of what I'm going to talk about in this video. So there's three economic theories that I have been following for quite some time, and one of them is Cantillon effect, the Cantillon's essay on economic theory, which I think is probably one of the best economic theories to follow, considering how old it is and how some of these economic forces that are taking place back in the 1700s can still be playing out today. So I really encourage everybody to kind of go and check out Cantillon's essay on economic theory. The other theory that we're going to be talking about is Triffin's dilemma and then also Gresham's law. And something that I have found interesting is that as over the last couple of weeks or so, I have been finding that more and more articles can really be related down to one or a combination of these three theories, and then again with the bullwhip effect, considering some of the things that are happening right now. But really, it's the Cantillon effect, uh, Gresham's law, and Triffin's dilemma. And down in the description of this video, I left links to a few articles, and in these articles, if you were to read them and then think about some of the economic theories from the past and incorporate it into the readings of some of these articles, and you can find where these economic theories are just completely present within them, but yet they're not stated as such. Oops, sorry guys, let me grab my notes here. So how many we have up in here? 25 of you? Right on. Thank you for hitting that like button when you come in to the live stream. And like I said, I left links down in the description of this video here. You can find it, the links to these articles. Now, the first one I really want to talk about, and these aren't in order in the description, so you're gonna have to pick it out. But the first one I wanted to talk about was the big flip in China. The big China flip is the way it's called here. And now I'm going to read you just a little passage out of this article, and then we'll kind of do a little discussion of it. It says, "No longer are economic policymakers planning for China's inevitable rise. The conversation now is venturing increasingly into whether the Chinese slowdown marks a sign its power is peaking prematurely, and that the hard work now should be to prepare for a decline rather than a rising China and all its consequences." And so now when we think about, like, over the last few years, right, it has been like pretty much a common narrative that China is going to be taking over as the world's largest economy, and, like, what was it, like 2028 or something? I can't remember what the exact date was, but it was like kind of imminent that this was going to be happening. And now we think about what's going on right now with China is that China's losing a lot of their manufacturing base, and it's moving to places like Vietnam and China and India and these other places around the globe that have cheaper manufacturing and cheaper transport. So, right, if we were to read this article and we think about some of the things that are happening within China in the description of the little section that I had just read here, you can see how the Cantillon effect is really playing out, right? Now, the Cantillon effect is when the increase of new money raises the standard of living. And that's what China really experienced when they had this rise in manufacturing. I mean, go on their way to becoming the largest, economy in the world. What ended up happening is they brought in a lot of new money from that manufacturing. That new money raised their standard of living. That standard of living then has added input cost of labor going into their manufacturing because of that higher standard of living. And they're finding that that manufacturing base then starts moving to cheaper nations out there. Now, that's really Cantillon in a nutshell, but that's really how it goes down, is that the new money comes in, raises the standard of living, that standard of living goes up, the people want to enjoy the money that comes in, ended up buying into foreign production, and that or their domestic manufacturing ends up leaving. Now, China is really just kind of suffering. I don't know if they're necessarily suffering with the input of foreign manufacturing as much as they're suffering with the idea that foreign manufacturing is competing with their manufacturing, and their manufacturing base is leaving. So it's pretty much still the same effect on it. Moving on to the other article, it's this one's coming out of Bitcoin, and I really like the writings of this author. I don't think he's necessarily a strong dollar theorist out there, but I believe that he really has a much, like, kind of balanced idea of how the dollar is operating within today's economy. because I think he's probably more like it's coming out of Bitcoin.com, so I'd assume that he's kind of a Bitcoiner, but I may be wrong on that. I don't know him personally. All right, but the article on this one says Chinese yuan not ready to topple the U.S. dollar as the world reserve currencies. This is says strategist. Okay. So the quote from this article: the U.S. enjoys a powerful network effect, including deep capital markets, critical lender of last resort facilities, and the provision of financial services that the rest of the world to the services to the rest of the world. Only the U.S. can currently play this role. Sky, I believe this was coming out of the global market strategist for the Global Data TS Lombard, right? So this is like an economist who works for, I guess, probably an investment company or something like that. But still, I think that what they are saying inside of there still is pretty true when you think about like how is it that some other currency, because like a lot of people say that China was going to like be the next world reserve currency. I mean, they're the next superpower and they're going to be the issuer of currency out there to the world. But one of the questions really comes up is how is it that you deliver this currency to the world, right? And now one of those things that you really have to have is the network like the United States has. Now, I'm not trying to say that the United States is awesome or something like that or the dollar is greater, but the fact that everybody around the world uses the dollar and the dollar provides the liquidity for transactions, it's really no other competitor out there. Like there just literally is nobody else who can do what the dollar is doing. And that's really what it says here in this little segment, this little snippet of it. It says the US enjoys a powerful network effect, including deep capital markets, right? You think about how like extensive the US Treasury market is in itself, like how much debt is written in dollars. The critical lender of last resort facilities, that's another one, right? You think about like how much it is that support that can come from the central bank of the United States comparatively to central banks around the world. There's nobody else who can quite do what the Federal Reserve is doing. Again, not saying that it's a great thing. I'm just saying that they kind of stand alone in that ability. Um, Services to the rest of the world. Only the U.S. can currently play this role. I totally agree with that. So when we think about like Triffin's dilemma, how is it that you get the money out to the rest of the world, right? The way you do it, at least from what Triffin's dilemma was saying, is that you really have to be a major importer of goods, right? Goods and stuff, and exporter of all your money. And that's really what Triffin's dilemma comes down to is like, how do you do that? Like, unless you are planning on going into some massive deficit trade, which the United States does, and then provide the world with that currency, how do you do that? You have to have something like the US Treasuries that gives the Fed ability to buy something that is going to be the safe and liquid asset for the world to also use as collateral and leverage and, just holding on to their assets as reserves. The U.S. Treasury market, there's nothing else out there that even comes remotely close to the size of it, right? Like even if another nation wanted to, they would have to go into so much borrowing to provide the world with a substitute to the U.S. Treasuries that there's nobody who's really going to be willing to have that kind of confidence to let them just do that. It's like, just go and start borrowing as much as the United States does. It's like almost impossible. All right. Last article talking about Venezuela, right? Now, in this one, the boom is over. Venezuelans lament end of the brief dollarization boost. And now this is a pretty interesting article to think about because not a lot of people look at Venezuela and they think, man, hyperinflation, Bolivar went to hell, but they don't really think about the dollar being used in Venezuela because there was the sanctions and dollars were like basically weren't allowed to be used in Venezuela and stuff like that. But there was a moment a few years ago in which that they allowed the use of dollars, like not the de-dollarization, but the dollarization in Venezuela. Like here, start using dollars here. We have issues with our economy. Listen to this. Let me see. Did I write it all down? I don't know if I wrote this down completely. Sorry, guys. Okay, the government of Nicolas Maduro relaxed currencies controls in 2019, allowing more transactions in dollars despite U.S. sanctions. The move led to a slight recovery in 2021 and then 2022 after 8 years of economic collapse and the migration of some 7.3 million Venezuelans. Well, if you read the article, it continues to talk about the decline of the economy within Venezuela. So for like a couple of years, it did really well. Now we have to think like what happened here in Venezuela with the abilities to transact in dollars. It did so well, and then all of a sudden it was over, and it's not doing well so anymore. Well, we think about it. It's just like Venezuelan's economy. The Venezuelan economy was in tanking, right? The bolivar was not buying anything. It was like hyperinflation kind of scenario. You can't even buy as much at the end of the day from the money that you earned from that day. It's just like that's how quickly it was losing value. So all of a sudden they're saying, okay, you know what, go ahead, just use dollars, right? Use dollars in the system. It's open. Nobody's going to get in trouble. Just go ahead and start using it. Well, the people who have dollars are like, woohoo, we're in the money, right? Because now you can go out there and buy stuff incredibly cheap because dollars are so much more valuable than the bolivar is, right? So now all of a sudden you have this access to an incredible amount of stuff with your dollars. Right? And now these dollars start flowing into the system, and everybody's now taking advantage of the idea that these dollars are now floating to the system. They're worth so much more. Now you have a booming economy, something that is doing quite well. It's not because you're using the bolivar, because you're using the stable currency of the US dollars. Well, for a couple of years, it works really well, but the same thing is going to happen no matter what you put this scenario into. If you have two currencies in the system, a good one and a bad one, what ends up happening? The bad currency drives out the good currency. So at first, everybody's like, yeah, cool, the dollar, look at all the awesome stuff I can buy. And then everybody's spreading these dollars out. And then the most industrious people out there begin to hoard the dollars, right? And they start pulling those things out of circulation and holding on to those things, because why would you want to spend dollars when you can spend bolivar, or hoard dollars when you would hold bolivar? Who would do that? No way. So everybody's going to let the bolivar go, and those who hoard dollars are going to do it. And that's what ends up happening. At first, it's everybody's really cool in the money, it works out for a while, but unless continuous new money comes into the system, those who have the first access to that money, or the most industrious people of it, who are not willing to invest it but hold on to it instead, hoard all the money, and the only thing that's left is the bolivar, and then we end up right back in the same situation we were in. So that's a great example of like Gresham's law taking place right there. So those were the three economic theories that kind of explain everything that's going on out there. It doesn't explain everything, but it gives you a really good idea when you look at pretty much any article that you find when it talks about the macroeconomics out there. You can really relate it down to the Cantillon effect, Gresham's law, or Triffin's dilemma. And then again, the bullwhip effect if you're looking at like trade news or something like that. Okay, so cool. I did that in under 15 minutes. Nice. All right. I try to do it quick because, attention spans, like my attention span doesn't really go much beyond 10 minutes. And so I try to knock the information out as quickly as possible. Thank you, Jeremy, for the $10, man. That is super cool of you. Thank you. I own a Subway in Raymond, Washington. I have record-breaking sales. It's almost like people are drunk with spending right now. I wonder if this was the Roaring 20s, like was Roaring 20s was like before the 30s. I don't know. I think that's probably the area that you're in. That does as well. There is a lot of talk of like how the robust, consumer is out there for the economy, and I really do believe that is the case right now, but it's not because of how awesome America, like how awesome our economy is. It just happens to be the condition that we are in ourselves. Like a good economy, like a strong economy, I should say, good or bad, that's really relative. A strong economy is built off of production and savings. That's really what it comes from, right? You can produce something, bring some value to the world, you get compensated for that. You save that money, you're in good position, right? Strong economy is built off of production and savings. But you can have a robust economy, like one that's operating, one that does a lot of transactions and continues to have this appearance of being strong, right? But it's more like robust. And that's not necessarily the same thing, because when you think about like just take, for example, the new jobs that we have, right? The jobs number that just came out. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something like 170,000 jobs. Most of these jobs, it was like 60,000 of them, 60, 70,000 of these jobs was in like the service industries, right? Within the hospitality industries, within the leisure, within like the medical kind of industries, service industry stuff, right? Then there was like another 16,000 jobs and another 22,000 jobs in construction and manufacturing. I think the 16,000 in manufacturing, 22 in construction. Now you think about it, these are like the manufacturing jobs. Like they're not like, again, depending on where you're living, it's all relative. But generally a manufacturing job is a decent paying job, right? Not necessarily as a service job like working at a hotel going to be, a decent job or a decent paying job. I guess that depends on what hotel you work at. But again, most of the time when you think about it, like manufacturing jobs would probably pay better than making beds would pay, right? So if you have less of those jobs within the market, well, then that's not necessarily a strong economy, right? Strong economy is built off of manufacturing, production, and savings, right? But this is really like evidence of servicing the rich, right? So those who have money are spending money, and those who are earning that money is obvious are those who are servicing the rich, not necessarily manufacturing goods for the world. You see where we're at on this? Yeah. So again, like, we might look at a robust economy, but is it really robust? I mean, like, is it really strong? I mean, it might be robust, but is it strong? All right. Thank you very much for the $10 too, man. That was very cool of you. Let me cruise back up here. All right. Good evening. Good evening. Seems like I'm early today. Well, good for you. I'm glad you're here. We got 100 people with 53 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. All right. Hard to consider or follow theories being that everything is so manipulated and manufactured. Just saying. No, I agree. I totally agree. But a lot of times, if you exclude a lot of those things that are being said out there and just bring it down to some of these simple economic theories. And I mean, just take for example, like how many, like, I mean, even I myself was thinking, man, what is it going to be like when China takes over as the world's largest economy? But again, I wasn't really necessarily incorporating Gresham's law and Triffin's dilemma into that, or even Cantillon effect, right? I was just going off of this idea, this theory, this talk that China was going to be the world's largest economy. Now I'm starting to question that. Like, if they are going to be the world's largest economy, how is that going to look? I mean, they would have to continue being the world's manufacturer or the world's debtor, right? Like, the United States issues a lot of debt to bring in new money. China was issuing manufactured goods, like they didn't issue out debt. But like China knows, like they played this game before. This is the reason why I'm not necessarily concerned, but looking to see what it is that China plans on doing, because they're just not going to allow themselves to fall into poverty, right? I mean, if they played this game a lot, they know what's coming down. So what is it that they're going to do? Like, they're going to have to figure out a way to get new money in. And, like if you go back through history and you look at some of like what these nations did when they started running out of new money, it's not pretty, right? Because they're in desperation mode at that point. Like either you go and start fighting for new money or you're going to suffer in poverty. So which one is it? Like, I mean, it sucks to have to go to war, but well, what are you gonna do? It's just like it's either we go and we start taking other people's stuff, or we're gonna suffer in poverty, right? And that's really what it ends up coming down to. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be a predictor of what China is planning on doing because I really don't know, but judging from what history says, it's probably not going to be a good thing. All right. Cantillon essay was a great read this summer in the boat. Hey, right on. I'm glad you read it. It is a good read, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of hard because it's like, he's talking about like, wagons and horses and shit that doesn't really like kind of pertain today. But then there is so much economic forces that he describes in there that do play out today. It's really worth the read. Especially like I should probably go back and read the chapters and talk about it, but when Cantillon talks about the way currency controls start to take place, because once a nation realizes that they have peaked out on their manufacturing and now their gold's starting to leave, they start putting like controls, like gold can't leave my nation, kind of thing. And so what ends up happening from that little law, right? If you make a law that says you can't export gold out of my nation, you got to think this is back in the 1700s or even earlier or something like that. What you're saying is that we no longer have a manufacturing base to bring gold in, right, to bring that money in. And if we allow this to leave, we are going to fall into poverty. So they make laws that say, no, you can't export this gold no matter what. Like, you will punishable by death. Well, then it makes the exporting of gold out of that nation worth so much more, right? You take something that somebody wants, you make it illegal, and then it makes it that much worth that much more. So now these people who are paid to get gold out of the country get paid a lot of money to do it. These money movers over the nation, and he blames a particular group of people. I don't want to say it here, but he names them straight up in that book. Yeah. All right. Good evening and happy Labor Day. Happy Labor Day. Ahoy, ahoy. All right. Hey, dishes. All nighter. Spank the like button. Yeah, Gammon's Kitco was spot on about the inverted yield curve. I missed it. I didn't see it. I should probably go and watch that one. I'm a little, it's funny, like with what we have going on right now, it's not the same, like, I don't think it's the same yield curve that we used to look at as far as when we envisioned it, because when we used to look at the yield curve, we would look at what market's perception of what the future was going to be, right? And that's one of the reasons why you see the yield curve invert, is because people were very nervous about the current state of affairs or the very near future, and they were demanding a higher interest rate to tie up their money for the short term. That was the reason why you would see this inverted yield curve. Out there 30 years, they weren't so concerned about it, but for the very current, foreseen future, they are very, very nervous about it. And that's what usually inverted the yield curve. But we have a lot of manipulation happening right now within the bond market. And mainly you got the Federal Reserve unwinding their balance sheet, which has a major impact into that treasury market. Now, I'm not going to, like, George Gammon is super smart. I mean, I've talked to him so many times, and I tell you, the conversation between him and Lynn Alden and Mike Maloney, the down in Orlando at the Rebel Capitalist, I tell you, I was sitting there just like, it was very hard to even absorb the level of talking into the banking industry and finance that these guys were getting into. It was incredible. I wish I had recorded it so I could go back and listen to it again. So there's no way that I could even compete with George Gammon as far as his level of understanding of the financial markets and banking and stuff like that. But still, I think about some of the economic forces that are at play right now and some of the impacts that used to dictate what would be an inverted yield curve. I don't think those are necessarily playing out today in the same fashion. Like, I think the inverted yield curve is a definite sign of frustration within the economy as far as geez, slow down. Okay, as far as the short term, I see that a lot of people see the trouble with that, and that would cause an inverted yield curve. But I think it's so manipulated and so messed up inside of there that it's hard to see it. Like, I think it's a very obscure indicator right now. That's where I bring up, like, the same thing that I always say anytime anybody asks me about the inverted yield curve. It was Alan Greenspan's response to what he felt about the inverted yield curve. And although he did say it is a very good indicator of a recession, what he likes to look at is the spread between the 5-year and 30-year. And when you see that spread start to widen, you know that it's corporate management's willingness to invest, and it's a very good indicator of a decent outcome for the future. So, like, whatever happens in the inverted yield curve, it very well could be an indicator of bad times to come. But what I'm looking for is that other indicator that says that we're out of the woods and now we're moving into better times. And from what Alan Greenspan was saying, it's that 5-year, 30-year spread, which is something that I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about. Like, maybe, and what's interesting is that inverted before the 2-year, 10-year did, right? And I did a video on that too, saying, wow, the 5-year, 30-year inverted. And it was like a couple days later, I think there was a news article out, talking about that. And then it was not too much later after that it, the whole yield curve inverted after that to the 2-year, 10-year mark, which is what everybody's looking for. All right. Hit the like button. Taking notes now. Right on. Yeah, if you have any questions about it, like, what I would really like to do is start breaking down these theories more, right? Because I really do think that if we were to wrap these economic theories into our daily thoughts of what we are reading every day, we can get a much better understanding. Because you have to think, like, every news article you've ever written, ever read that was written by somebody's either opinion or it was propaganda trying to push out a particular information out there. So it's not like these articles are like, the absolute truth, right? But they do have bits of information inside of them that do tell us what is going on out there. I mean, how the meaning that you give it could be very different. Like you could say, hey, this is a political, decision that was made that's screwing the people on purpose. I mean, you could give it that meaning and then find all the evidence that says that. Or you could say this was an economic force that happened, that a political reaction began to take place from, right? So again, it's all about the meaning you give it. And I'm not saying either one of them is right or wrong, right? Because this is all about how it is that you take this information in order to determine what your future is going to look like. All right. PED reported earnings with another profit, which had new wells, about 4,000 acres. Cash will still zero debt. Oh, you're trying to push that? Okay. Hey, what it be, buddy? Oh, just chilling out here on a Saturday night with you. Thanks for joining in. We got 150 people with 75 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button, everybody. All right. Thankfulness and so grateful for those that labor in every way. Thank US for working. Yeah, well, thank you, Deja Vu. What a great comment. I love that. Everything is spending. To clarify, it's like people are spending money they don't have recklessly. Oh, I see what you're saying there, Jeremy. Thanks again for the super chat. That was very cool of you. Well, if you don't feel the bad times, right? I mean, if you haven't lost your job, if your neighbor hasn't lost their job, or if they lost their job, they got a job right away, then you don't really feel like the effects of it, right? You're not feeling upset. But if everybody was coming with these bad stories of being laid off and going bankrupt and all kinds of stuff, then people have a tendency to start pulling back on their spending. But yeah, it is strange to think, but I don't know, really. It was kind of something I almost predicted, when I said that people were going to lose their jobs at the zombie corporations and find jobs over at the service industry, and we may not see unemployment rise dramatically during a recession like you normally would. That's one of the reasons why people are still spending, is because they have a job, right? As long as you have a job, you're spending. And now, again, like, if you really kind of take economic history and theories back a little bit further, then you would find that when interest rates rise in the economy, that's a sign of the economy doing well, right? Not a sign of trying to restrict the economy. That's what Federal Reserve manipulation within the financial markets is doing. The economy is doing well. That's why the interest rates are high. See, people are out there demanding money so that they can buy products in order to sell them. That's generally how that works. And that when money starts, or when the interest rates are falling, that's people who have money looking to lend it out there but can't find anybody because nobody's willing to borrow. So that would be the typical economic environment when you see interest rates rising and falling, is that when interest rates go up, that's a sign of a hot economy. And when interest rates fall, it's a sign of a slow economy. And so when we think about it, like when interest rates are high, right, that's actually a sign of a decent economy rolling along and actually doing well. So, that could be another reason why you're seeing so many people buying sandwiches. All right, people, get the likes up. Come on, we got 82. They're going up, man. I love it. It's happening. All right, we've got 134 of you watching still. That's awesome. All right, what is a VCR person? Never heard that before. A VCR person. Did I say that? Did I say VCR person? Maybe I said something really fast and it came out like VCR. All right. Hey Simon, you sir are a national treasure. Continue to alert us and give the down to earth, common sense, no nonsense expertise by being self-educated in the twilight zone. Chickens are going at it over there. All right. Well, thank you very much, man. And it's kind of funny how I've come up with a lot of these economic theories out there, because again, like I mean, a lot of you know this, that I don't really watch a whole lot of other YouTubers out there. I don't listen to a lot of other economic theories. I just kind of follow the things that I'm following and, trying to come up with my own ideas and own understanding of what's happening within the economy. And it's really kind of taken me in a different direction. Like like I don't know if I'm talking like anybody else does out there, you know, especially when I keep bringing up these particular theories or ideas and Cantillon effect and stuff like that. You know, I know a lot of times, you know, as far as economic discussions and you know, when we're putting out videos and stuff like that, as content creators, you got to think. I mean, I think about that. Like being a content creator, if this was my job, I would be trying very hard to get views, right? And with that, I know that if I put out stuff that would scare the hell out of you, like if I sat around and just put out fear mongering videos, because I can do it. Like, I mean, I really could. I have a hell of an imagination and I could come up with some really wild stuff. And it would probably do pretty well, right? Because I see that's what ends up happening. People are like, man, US dollars over this decision right here is going to cause you to die. You know, people are going to love that. They're going to be all over those videos. And, you know, I could probably be making a lot of money off of it. But that's not what I feel, right? Like when I come across this information, I come out and I give it to you very straightforward and as honest as I can from the understanding that I have of it. And when I think about people saying stuff like "get your money out of the bank now before it's too late," and I'm like, where are you coming up with that? Like, you know, how many times I've heard that over the last 15 years that I've been studying the economy to get my money out of the bank tomorrow before it completely crashes. And I'm not trying to say like don't do it because it's a ridiculous idea. What I'm saying is like I think it's a bit unfounded, right? I mean, people ask me about it, and I said, no, the Federal Reserve is going to come up with a lifeboat and save everybody, and that's exactly what they did because they kind of mentioned that, you know, in their own talkings that they'll have tools that are available to them when the time comes, right? Like, you know, you have these unusual and exigent circumstances pop up, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, hey, guess what we have? A bank term funding program that nobody knew about, right? Except that they kind of mentioned something of it in the past. That's the reason why I don't fall for that stuff, you know? I mean, I could do it. I could, you know, I could put out videos that scare the hell out of somebody, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put out the information I think is appropriate and real. Trump 24, end the wars, end the sanctions, bring the dollar back. I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, whatever. It's, you know, let me ask you, just because you seem to be a Trump fan, and I'm not trying to say because I'm certainly not a Biden fan by any means. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard a single word that dude has ever said once. So I'm not really the political person on it. But, you know, there was a moment there right before Trump left office that he was, you know, not COVID and stuff, but right before that, that he was screaming at Jerome Powell to lower interest rates and to take, you know, to print money, right? He said there was no inflation at all. And this is what in that Jerome should take interest rates into negative territory. I mean, does nobody ever brings that up to me, right? Nobody ever says, "Hey man, can you imagine what this world would look like if we had followed Trump's guidance and printed up all this money and taken interest rates into negative territory and then went into COVID with that kind of situation going on? What would it look like?" Nobody brings up that what if, right? They bring me all kind of what ifs, but they don't bring me that one. Right? And it's because I know that Trump wasn't really wanting Jerome Powell to lower the interest rates and print money. That was not the intention of it. What the intention of that whole little comment that he was making, it wasn't little, he did it over and over again for months, right? For like 2 months, it was like the hardest thing that he was talking about. The whole idea of it was to lower the inflation expectation, and by lowering the inflation expectation you can raise the real interest rates. This is something that we had discussed in the past. So he was working very much in conjunction with the Federal Reserve. I mean, the two of them are bros, right? I mean, it was Trump who appointed Jerome Powell. He says, here man, I want you at the Federal Reserve doing the chairman position. I mean, it was Trump who put him there. And to think that, you know, they weren't buddies the whole time, that's not right. Like, I mean, they were very much in cahoots. And I mean, at least that's the way I see it and I believe it, you know, just because that was the outcome that came from it. It was by lowering that inflation expectation you can raise the real interest rates, and that's exactly what they were up to at the time. Man, those chickens are battling it out over there. Must be fighting for roost spot. Oh, your name is Crummy VCR. I'm a little slow. Capitalist control. Hasn't China implemented some form of capital controls? They have, yeah. Isn't that a big reason why so many Chinese families are families invest in real estate, and also the same cause of the housing bubble. Yeah, but you see what's going on with their property markets over there right now. It's an absolute chaos, right? Their property developers drug that entire property sector down. They're in bad position right now because of all that. So yeah, it's not a good thing that's going on. I don't know if that's maybe what you were trying to imply on it, but yeah. All right. Hey, WBJ, good to see you here. So, isn't that a big reason why so many Chinese families invest in real estate? Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm trying to like, maybe try and think that a little deeper and more thorough, because I mean, it was like, there was, what was it, the ownership rate, like it was like here in the United States, like the amount of ownership of people who actually live in their houses they own is just like it was pretty low. I can't remember what it was, 60% or something, 60, 70%. But in China it was a lot. It's like 90 something percent. Right? So most people who live in homes own that home, right? As opposed to like maybe renting it or leasing it out or something, of that nature. Like Airbnb kind of stuff or whatever. I don't know. But I would imagine, yeah, that would be a major reason for that, right? If you had capital controls keeping it within there, then you would have to invest in something, and buying a house is probably the best investment that an individual can do for themselves, considering everybody needs a place to live, right? And so I can go with that theory. Yeah. What do you think about unemployment among young people here in the United States and in China? Well, I think here in the United States it's a joke. I think there's plenty of jobs for young people to go and do. And if they didn't go and do those jobs, there's plenty of money to be made. In China, it's a much different situation, right? Because they don't have a service industry like, well, they have services in China. I'm not saying they don't. They have manufacturing base there. And so when their manufacturing slows down, that's all the jobs, right? So all of a sudden you got 20% unemployment rising amongst young people in China, and they have no place to go and they're educated. That is a nasty recipe, right? But here in the United States, there's plenty of jobs, right? There's plenty of places to go and work, and it's not really that difficult to earn money here in the United States. I mean, it is hard to make it good, but it's not hard to make it, right? I mean, anybody can really just get a job doing just about anything, and find some crappy apartment and make their way through the world. I mean, not like it's going to be awesome for them or something like that, but generally most people could probably do that. In China, when you have a 20% unemployment rate and everybody's like got these degrees and they're all like super smart and they're pissed off, man, that's a tough situation to be in. Very different. McDonald's creates lots of jobs, dentists, heart surgeons. Yeah, I like the idea of incorporating these theories in our daily life. That's what I've been doing and been walking around with a better understanding because of it. Yeah, absolutely, all-nighter. In fact, I was talking with my wife about that earlier today, and I'm like, man, I wonder, this is kind of really thinking out loud on it, but I was like wondering, I was just like, wow, I wonder if there's like a guided meditation that you could change your subconscious to incorporate these things right into it, so you don't have to think about whether or not what you're seeing is the Cantillon effect. You would just automatically know it. Right? And, yeah, so maybe I can make some brainwashing videos for you guys. All right. High interest rates are the product of a strong economy. That's what Jay Snyder was saying yesterday, too. Yeah, right? I mean, that's, and so, there's very few of us who think like that. Jeff Snyder, Brent Johnson, I met both of those guys personally. Like, I've shook their hand and talked to them and stuff like that. And really, like, I align more with their theories and their understanding because of these past theories that I have also followed. They line up with what they are saying. So when I see people talking about how, like, oh, we need to return to a gold standard, or the BRICS are going to introduce a gold standard or something like that, or a gold currency, and I think to myself, it was just like, well, what about all these economic theories from the past that would not really allow something like that to just occur, right? And that there would be consequences from doing these type of things. And I don't really hear a lot of people bring those things up. So, like I said, Jeff Snyder and Brent Johnson, they very much align with a lot of the things that I'm saying. I mean, maybe not everything because I haven't listened to them in a long time, but for the most part, I would assume that a lot of the stuff that I've been saying is a lot of what they're lining up with saying too. All right. I have a great deal of respect for you and all the work you do. Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate it, man. I put a lot into this, I mean, to me, it doesn't seem like work, right? I sit around, I read articles, I look at economic theories, I have discussions with people, I kind of just keep working on my ideas and what's happening, and then I share those ideas with you. So to me, it doesn't necessarily feel like work. Um, I should put it to work, right? I mean, I should make it feel like work and actually, do things that, push the channel more, do more stuff like on Instagram or putting out like TikTok videos or something like that to try and spread this information around a little bit more. But again, like I needed an outlet, and that was YouTube for me. And when the videos started taking off and really started doing something for me, getting monetized and stuff like that, I was like, I was not expecting any of that, like at all. Um, and so, I really just want to keep it the way that I feel I started this channel for, and that's just to put out information and have a discussion, and whatever comes from that comes from that. Hopefully the universe takes care of business. All right. Modern monetary theory wins. I don't. Why? Is there any example of modern monetary theory actually in use for any kind of length of time? Like other than maybe like some UBI testing in some areas and stuff like that? I cannot find modern monetary theory as an example other than, I don't know, than other than theory. Like that's it. Like I can't find any evidence of it actually occurring, of any nation having any use of modern monetary theory in a you know time tested fashion. I like your name. Well, Simon Lamb, I like your name too. All right, first principles. All right. If you're not watching anyone else, how do you know that your thoughts are unique? I don't think, I mean, I don't in that fashion think that mine are unique because obviously there's my theories are coming from other people's theories, right? So I'm not the only one. What I'm trying to say is, as far as the uniqueness goes, is that I don't know how many people are trying to bring in these other three theories and saying, look, this is from the past, right? A lot of times you will find this information and the article might be like very politically minded, right? And it'll be like, because of these political decisions, these things are happening, right? Which, okay, I mean, if that's the line of thinking and the reality you want to be on, that's what's going to be, right? But seeing these information and saying, well, wait a minute, this is Gresham's law taking place, or this is, whatever. That's the uniqueness that I'm trying to convey here, right? Not saying that I'm like, thinking of the economy in a way that's much different from everybody else because I am a unique thinker. I'm just incorporating theories from the past in a way that I don't think a lot of other people are doing. That's what I'm trying to say. When you are going to run for president, when are you going to run for president? You should start a new party. Yeah, can I start the mind your own business party? I think that would probably be it. Not for you personally. I appreciate the offer for running for president, but that's really where I think like a lot of times when we look at political parties out there, it's a blame caster, right? I want to be on this side because I like casting blame at that side, right? And so like if we and let them think whatever they want, we'll think what we want over here, and we'll just mind our own damn business, and then whoever has the smartest ideas will be the winner of it, instead of being, no, they got the dumber idea over there, right? And I'm going to be the winner because I can explain how dumb their idea is better than anybody else can. Like I'm you see where I'm kind of getting at. The mind your own business. We will come over here, we'll mind our business, we'll figure it all out, and then and let them argue over there on that side. I love economic theories, but I've got to put trades on. Sometimes it's dangerous mixing the two. You're absolutely right. That's why economists are not investors, right? And investors are not economists. See, a lot of people look at. Oh, I forgot to turn my notifications on. How do I do that? Geez, those birds are really going at it today. Okay, let me see. Oops. All right. There, I turned my notifications off. There. All right. Oh, I forgot what I was saying. Oh, yeah, talking about economists and investors. See, a lot of people say, like, man, you know so much about the economy. You should be like, just a super millionaire or something like that. And it was just like, well, I'm on my way. I mean, I'm trying to figure that part out. But Economists and investors are not the same, right? It's not the same thing that's going on. You might look at the same information, you might be like, discussing kind of the same theories and thoughts or something like that, but the actions that you take from the information that you get are much different. Like to me, I'm not really necessarily thinking about how I can make money off of the information outside of maybe being an entertainer, right? But taking the information and trying to figure out what the cause and effects are and not looking at it in a biased fashion, like hoping that this happens because I put money towards it. I feel that that's a lot of times what a lot of investors are doing, and then they become wishful thinkers, right? And then they look for the evidence that is going to go along with what they are hoping is going to happen. If I don't have any investments, then I don't have to worry about having that kind of like thought outlook from the information that I'm going towards. However, if you are an investor, then you would have this expectation part. So the information that you are getting, you would have to have an expectation from that information because you are planning on investing with it. That's a whole different way of looking at things. All right. Do you think we would be better off with Handmaids? I'm not sure I understand the question. All right, my boss lost $2 million in investments in Silicon Valley Bank. Well, I'm not saying that, you're not going to, okay, you got $2 million. Okay, I was thinking, people ask me if I was worried about having my money. I don't have $2 million, and I certainly wouldn't have it tied up in a bank. So I'm just saying, I mean, that kind of position was much different from what I think the average person would be facing when it comes to a banking issue, right? Wars aren't going to end. No, I think wars are going to intensify, really. All right. I see an inverted yield curve as a three-step process. One, inversion indicates a recession is coming. Don't know when. Step two, magnitude and duration. Inversion indicative of magnitude and duration into duration of deteriorating economy conditions. Step three, yield curve uninverts, generally 3 to 6 months. Countdown to the start of the recession. Yeah, that's pretty typical of how it goes down. And again, like if we are running into a recession, what's the worst part of it, right? Everybody loses their job and the corporations get bailed out. If we don't see that, like that's one of the things that I've been kind of questioning. We may run into recessionary like environment, but what if the unemployment doesn't rise significantly? Like, what it may rise, which I'm sure it will, but what if it doesn't rise significantly? And what if they allow a bunch of corporations to fail? I know there's a lot of what ifs, but that seems to be what seems to be happening, to at least in the view that I have of it. Whether that's the outcome or not, I don't know. If the Federal Reserve isn't part of the government, why does the president appoint the head? Well, he's not the head. Don't confuse yourself. Jerome Powell does not make decisions of that magnitude. He has a vote on the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. There's like, 12 or 13 of them or something like that. So these people are the ones who are voting on monetary policy. Jerome Powell is merely the spokesperson, right? So he comes out and speaks for the FOMC, but in no way is he the decision maker. Right. That's why I think it's funny that Trump was like, I want to file Jerome Powell. This was like, why? It doesn't change what the FOMC is going to vote for. Right. It doesn't make any difference. All you're going to do is just put somebody else out there who's going to speak words. That's it. That's the only difference. Right? And so I find it interesting when people, especially when I find economists blaming Jerome Powell. I was just like, come on, man. What do you really know about the Federal Reserve and their monetary setting policies? Right? Because the Jerome Powell, he's just a spokesperson. He's not a decision maker, right? I mean, he has a little tiny, he has a 1/13 of a decision, All right. After 1944, Bretton Woods and the end of World War II, which initiated the liquidation of British Empire and pound, and then in 1971 is the end of Bretton Woods, and now subprime loan, toxic loans. What will end the U.S. dollar power? What will end the U.S. dollar power is if there's somebody else who can provide the world with a safe and liquid asset like the U.S. Treasuries can, right? And then the dollar wouldn't exist anymore. Or if the Federal Reserve quit buying those things. Or maybe they start buying, I guess the Federal Reserve could always buy the debt of a foreign nation and put that on their balance sheet and issue out U.S. dollars. It's kind of weird to think about, but I guess they could do that, you know? Huh. That's weird to think about. Okay. Who would want to invest in Chinese harbor freight quality real estate? Yeah, no kidding, right? We are going into a solar minimum where the harnessing seasons are going to get shorter. We will begin to starve. I don't know. I think that there's enough, I think there's enough ability and ingenuity to do like indoor gardening and stuff like that, that I don't know if we would necessarily face that kind of issue. I mean, I guess if there's less power because of it or something, that might be the case. But I don't know. There's a lot of people like. I mean, I know there's going to be food shortages coming just because of the simple fact that the world is going to starve and then it's going to cause food prices to go up. But I think about here in the United States, especially coming from the Pacific Northwest, it is really difficult to understand how it is that there's food or a lack of food out there because it's very abundant around here. I mean, strange. All right. Okay. Over the next 40 years, the food will disappear. In other words, what event or situation will possibly pop the U.S. toxic asset private debt bubble, which I heard is at least $200 trillion? I have no idea what's going to cause that. I mean, it's going to take something to replace the dollar, right? And I mean, what is it? I mean, once we have evidence of that being there, then we can say this is the way it's going to look. But there's no evidence of the dollar like having a competitor out there. China also lost 1 trillion to capital flight. They have no money given the severe debt loads at the municipal levels used to finance bridge houses to nowhere. Can you quickly or at length talk about the biggest aha moment you've had when researching economics? Excuse me. Something you didn't expect but saw it clear as day when you did. The biggest aha moment. I don't know. Because it's always an evolving theory, and always evolving thoughts. I don't know if I necessarily had like an aha moment. Reading The Creature from Jekyll Island was probably my aha moment, right? That was what opened my mind up to like, oh no, like, whoa, central bank, what is this thing? So if there was ever an aha moment, I think that was probably it. Reading The Creature from Jekyll Island, that book, which is one of two books that I've ever read on economics. That and the essay, Cantillon's essay. So, and because that book explains so much about, the creation and rise of the Federal Reserve and what it is that the Federal Reserve is up to, um, that is what kind of got me into like just keep researching more and deeper and further. I don't think China is like that anymore, but I don't know. All right. It's hard to find a crappy apartment in Seattle. Yeah, but can you use hypnosis? I'm a hypnotherapist. Really? Oh, that's cool. Well, okay, so it's funny about meditations and guided meditations and stuff is I always thought that like meditations were like super corny and weird and just like, I just like crystal grip and stuff. I never really thought about what it is that meditation can do for you and the benefits of it. Um, I would imagine that hypnosis would probably be a better way to go about it, but ultimately like a guided meditation where you put these thoughts into your subconscious just before you go to bed and again right when you wake up, and it's amazing on how it really changes your life. Like you will then bring yourself to the world in a way that is much different from prior to doing it, right? So I think about like what it is that like as you're conducting your business, you're just going through life, you're just doing your thing, and you might see like I don't know, like a particular economic thing happening, right? You see like maybe a rise of like a homeless encampment or something like that, or you see a bunch of apartments being built somewhere, and you don't really quite understand what is happening within your own economy there. But if you take on some of these theories and you are quite aware of how these economic forces are playing out or how they play out, then all of a sudden you might feel the understanding of what it is that's happening within your community. You're like, man, there's a lot of rise of homeless people over the last 10 years, but yet I've also seen a huge rise in the retirement community at the exact same time. So this might be one of the reasons why you're offsetting the other, and you think, okay, well, this is a gentrification thing that's happening. What is really taking place? Well, it's new money that's coming into the system. So you start understanding how Cantillon effect works, and how the people who are moving into that new area, they want to enjoy the luxuries from what they had experienced back home. And since they might have moved from a very expensive area, they sold their house, moved to a cheaper area, this retirement community that's starting to boom. Now we're finding that the conveniences and desires and the wants and needs and whatever coming from these new property owners are now changing the way the economy looks within that particular area, and the working class people who used to have these regular jobs there and able to make a living can no longer make it there, and they're now falling into homeless, right? So this is like, if you can understand like a lot of how these economic processes work, then it makes a lot more sense. And some people could just like, I would think that if you can incorporate these theories deep enough into your subconscious, that you would just automatically see it as it's occurring and not actually have to think about the steps that are occurring that make it happen, but just simply intuitively just already know. And that's really where I think like understanding maybe from a subconscious level, and that's where meditation could come in and help with that. So I need more lights out here. I recently saw a comparison claiming that COL is actually lower on average in Japan than in Alabama. And the GDP is terrible way to measure economic growth, health, thoughts. Huh. I don't know. I guess I would have to put a little bit more thought into that one and kind of see what it is that I want to see, that comparison claim thing. Can I hypnotize myself? I don't know. I don't know much about hypnotism. The globe is highly leveraged. If we went back to a gold standard, then we bring on a depression infinitely more severe than the 1929. Yeah, I really believe that too. I mean, I need to turn the light on here. Where is there a light? I can turn that one on, I guess. I believe that too. I think that the gold standard would limit the amount of transactions that can occur around the world, and therefore a lot of people would end up falling into poverty just simply because there's not the. I mean, the only reason why the dollar was used so prevalently during the gold standard is because it provided the liquidity that gold couldn't do, right? And that's really what it came down to, is that gold, there wasn't enough gold to do the transactions, and gold is cumbersome. Dollars were easy to use and everybody wanted them, and that was really the rise of the dollar, was just because it was like so many people love the idea of having the liquidity available to them to do the transactions. We are always somewhat self-hypnotized. Yeah, I can believe that. It's the story we tell ourselves every day. Good evening, you salty berserkers. All right. Kenoshi wishes everyone a hot evening unless you are cool like me. Returning to a gold-backed currency would cause a huge reaction in the economy. A lot of BS jobs would disappear, and so would a lot of spending habits. Yeah, and I think it would also create a lot of poverty as well. I have a hot rod shop where all of my customers are very wealthy, and we build them cars they don't need. When will the bottom fall out of my business? I mean, hold on one second. I'm gonna turn this light off. Where's this light at, Mom? Oh, that one don't work. Sorry, guys, that light is burnt out. I can't turn it on. But as far as your business goes, I would imagine, like right now, you got the separation between the classes, the rich and the poor. There's plenty of rich out there. Oh, yeah, I'll take that. Thank you, Mom. Very cool. We'll put that right there. Ah, there we go. Hey, now you can see it. All right. But I think that I think that the separation between the rich and the poor is going to leave a lot of rich people still within the economy. I mean, you can already see like, what was it, classic cars, hot rod cars and stuff have lost a lot of value over the last year, and it's because, the access to money and stuff. Man, that is way too bright. What if I turn that down? There we go. That's a little better, right? And so that leaves a lot of people out there with money, and if you have money, you don't really care, what's going on in the economy, especially if you have tons of it. You're just going to enjoy your life with it. And so I would imagine that there's probably a lot of people out there who really enjoy classic cars and hot rod cars and whatever, and, continue to have your services needed. I would think that, like, a lot of that kind of stuff is probably going to start fading away. A lot of the luxury stuff that's out there, including the classic cars. But, as of right now, if there's plenty of money in the system, then you should have plenty of business, especially if you're the only one around who's doing it. In Jacksonville, Florida, the housing market is said to be 40% overvalued. However, it does not appear that prices are coming down a great deal, perhaps due to the limited inventory. Thoughts? Well, that's exactly what I think as well, is that the limited inventory is going to keep the house prices elevated, and that you're not really going to see the prices come down dramatically until you see a rise in foreclosures or a rise in inventory, right? Because it's the only place that I can see inventory coming from is either one, people selling their house, which why would you do that if you have a low interest rate, right? Or you build more, or you have a rise in foreclosures. And those are the only places that you can really find inventory coming from. The sales, the foreclosures, or the building of new homes. And the building of new homes is not exactly a booming market right now. I mean, I know I sell building supplies for a living, and it's not exactly like a booming market in the building supply industry. So if they're not selling a lot of building supplies, you're probably not building a whole lot of homes right now either. So that's really like what I feel is happening with the inventory levels and keeping those prices elevated. If we saw a rise in foreclosure, I would think differently. Nick Solano, what would that be bad? It would suck. Kind of like alcohol coming off the booze and going through the DTs. MMT works because of global arbitrage. Maybe the theory works, but I haven't seen any practice of it. So how can we say it works if it doesn't actually exist, or it hasn't ever existed for any kind of length of time to give it any kind of test, All right, when they can no longer afford to spend on toys. The new Libertarian Party. Yeah, that would be nice to see a rise of a libertarian party, but I just think that it's so far into the mess of it that, the libertarian thought would just be so far off of a concept that it would be very difficult to get the people on board with that. They would much, much rather blame the other side and say that's the problem for my issues. A libertarian party would make people really take responsibility for themselves, and that's the last thing they want to do. They really want to just blame somebody else for their problems. If a viable third party candidate runs in 2024, they got my vote. Exactly, Salty. It would be like most a necessary, painful detox, but who knows what all the consequences would be. I always wondered how much taxes going up kills the economy and how much more they can take from the people before the whole system snaps. Well, there's a moment there, like they can go too far. It's like on a bell curve of it, It's just like you can tax to a point where it actually benefits society because you can, bring in more opportunities or whatever you want to call it. But then you can take it too far where you start taxing the point that the people to it limits them and their ability to even, function in their own lives and stuff. And so they start having to do deterioration. So, and again, then you could go back down and tax so little again that it doesn't provide any kind of decency to the society as all, because you don't tax enough. So you can either tax on the way up too much, right at a decent amount, or too little, and it really just depends on the position in which that everybody is in at the time that they do that. I'm not saying that taxing is right or wrong, or however they come up with the idea of it. Is just like, I can just see where it'd be very difficult, even through the idea of, like, say, how it's difficult to understand where inventories need to be through the bullwhip effect. It would be the same thing with taxes. It's like, you don't know exactly how much to tax the people, because you don't know exactly how much they're going to earn or how much you're going to need, or and it's just all these variables that kick into it. So at some point you probably have undertaxing followed by overtaxing. All right. What stock should I buy right now? I'm. That's funny. I'm not an investor to give out like stock picking advice or investment advice and stuff like that. But for me, I really have still only buy one stock regularly, and that's Altria. Marlboro cigarettes and Anheuser Busch. Decent dividend yield, and you know I don't drink or smoke, but I do know a little bit about addiction. So it's like, to me, it's a place that I've been going to. All right, heavy duty hiking socks, not stocks. Get stuff that will last a long while. Consider why I would say that. Consider why, WHY. Yeah. Is invest in AI hype. Let's see here. It would be an interesting idea for a speculative story. I put you down for maybe on the for a maybe on the handmade question. All right. Think the 2 year or 3 month yield will drop to 4%, or the 10 year will go up to 5%? I have no idea. I mean, I have no idea where those interest rates are going to be going. I mean, I think they're going to stay elevated for a significant amount of time, but where exactly they end up going to or landing, I don't know. I don't think the Federal Reserve is going to push it that much higher. They might, just to keep the credible threat of it, they might raise interest rates, but really, I think that the credible threat and the idea that they would raise rates is probably enough to get the impact out of the market that they're looking for. Man, I'm jealous it's still light where you're at. Well, it just went down. Yeah, it stays light pretty, up here in Oregon. During the summertime, it can stay late, light all the way out till 9:30, almost 10 o'clock at times. Right now, it's getting a little darker earlier, but still. Past generations invested in future generations. Keep them close. I 1,000% agree. The Creature from Jekyll Island should be a required reading. Yeah, I mean, really, that's what. I mean, if it wasn't for that book, I don't know if I would really have continued on, like, doing research and stuff like that. But that book intrigued me so much as to what's happening that it was just like I just couldn't stop after that. What do you think about market crash in September? Why would it crash in September? Yeah. I have a hard time predicting like particular events like that. I think there's going to be a liquidity crisis towards the end of the year and the beginning of next year, like the end of this year and going into like January, February, or something like that. And it's not because of any kind of evidence that I've come across. It's because the Treasury Department is like the U.S. Treasury is saying that they're loading up on cash, getting ready to do a bond buyback in case of a liquidity issue at the beginning of the year. I mean, that's the only reason why I think it. It's not because of any other evidence. It's because they said it, and that they're getting ready for it. And nobody talks about it. So it's just like, I know everybody talks about liquidity issues, but they don't necessarily talk about the Treasury doing a bond buyback. They put that information out. The three big, news companies, Bloomberg, New York, or the Wall Street Journal, and was it Reuters or something? Somebody else. It was like Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and somebody else. Each put a story out that day that the Treasury said it. That they got this bond buyback program that they're planning on doing at the beginning of the year in 2024, and then that was it. Nobody talked about it after that. And I'm like, I wonder why that is. Like, as it got the information out, they told us, and then that's it. They don't have to tell us anymore about it. All right. I am out of the market and am in the process of closing my 401ks now. Wow. You could read Zero Hedge before you go to bed and when you wake up in the morning. Yeah, I mean, very much so. But again, it's just like, it's just like anybody else's information out there. You're taking in the opinion of an individual out there. Now, whether or not you want that buried deep into your subconscious as what it is guiding your life, then I would be very careful on what it is that you're planning on putting there first thing in the morning and last thing before you go to bed. If you're putting in an economic theory that you know about, right? Not just getting some random information from Zero Hedge. Not saying that it's not good or bad. I'm not going that route about it. I'm just saying that you have to be careful with that moment there, because whatever it is you put into your mind, it's going to start messing with your life, right? It's whether it's good or bad, it's up to you. So really, if you want to manifest a more positive outcome in your world, then you have to kind of have that kind of energy going when you wake up in the morning, and have those kind of thoughts in the subconscious that are going to bring that sort of thing to you. If you're sitting there taking in information that is random right before, because I've done this, I did it for a long time, and believe me, you can get pretty smart about things and talk about a lot of different theories and stuff. But again, when you do that, you're putting it really close to setting it in to a point that it's very difficult to pull it back out again, right? So if you put in how can I say it? If you put in information that is misunderstood, then you may screw your subconscious up to misunderstand the information guiding you through your life. That's all I'm saying, right? When you're just sitting there randomly looking at information throughout the day, it's not so much absorbed as in the same fashion as right before you go to bed and when you wake up. So it's a lot easier to just kind of take the information for what it is and not necessarily set it into your subconscious like that. All right. 401ks are a scam. Are IRAs better than 401ks? How to do you save, prepare for retirement? Well, that's something that's pretty interesting to think about, because it's only been, I mean, a lot of people who don't really know my story from the past is that just a few years ago I was really broke. Like, I didn't have any money at all, right? And it was in 2017 that I started the YouTube channel, but it took quite a few years before the YouTube channel was able to be monetized to a point that it was like, oh wow, look, I can make money at this. And then even after that, it took, I mean, I was paying off debts, I was doing all kinds of stuff with this money, but not exactly saving it, because, I was doing other, I think, responsible things with it. I did save a bunch up and buy the house, because I earned that much money and I had to pay a lot in taxes, and really it didn't leave me with a whole lot of money. Like a lot of times people will see, wow, you got 126,000 subscribers, you're big on YouTube, you've done these speaking engagements, you must be like, you must be just rolling it or something. That's not the case at all. Like, not even. I mean, YouTube does pay pretty well at times. Right now, the ad revenue is down, the views are down a little bit, but, it just is what it is. When lumber was running up at its all-time high and everybody wanted to know what the hell was going on with lumber, and every video I was putting out was getting, 50, 60, 70,000 views, you could make some pretty good money doing that. So when it comes to like retirement, I have some pretty minimal starts to retirement. Like, it's nothing significant, and I spread the money out pretty well. I mean, I buy silver bullion, I buy cryptocurrencies, I buy into the stock market. I do own some bonds, not a lot, but I do own some treasury bonds. So, I mean, I'm getting started, in my opinion. And really, once you once you start getting into the game a little bit and you actually have some skin in the game, then you start playing a little bit more. So I'm just getting started. Like, I don't really have a retirement. I don't really have savings. Whoa, that is a huge spider, guys. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, I wonder if I can get you guys to see it. Let me see. Check my God. Let me see here. Okay. Check it out. I think it's huge. Whoa.